Today we have none other than Michael McHenry, who is the founder of the McHenry Group, a Utah-based boutique restaurant group focused on experiential concept creation and forever challenging the industry's status quo, one brand at a time. A homegrown, self-made trailblazer, brand storyteller, and concept gangster. I love that.
There you go.
Michael is a man who has a strong commitment to quality and has carved a name for himself in the culinary industry in our community here in Salt Lake City. A few of his restaurant concepts include Sunday's Best in Sandy, Utah, Oakwood Fire Kitchen in Draper, and his most recent collaboration sparked up in St. George, Utah, called Pica Rica BBQ.
That's the one. Yeah.
I've been seeing
that one's hot, man.
I've been seeing that on social media. It looks
it's
legit.
popping off. Yeah.
Dude,
it's a big one.
I might go down to St. George this weekend for Memorial Day.
We'd love to have you in. Just go early, but just message me. I'll make sure you get.
Okay.
But we've yet to make it to our closing time. Right.
Really?
So obviously that was a good intro. Appreciate hearing all the good stuff. And you go right to Pica Rica. It's like lights out on the barbecue.
Hit it up. It looks like an awesome concept. Well, thanks for being here, Michael.
Of course.
I'm stoked for this. Usually the first question I ask my guests is to talk a bit about your upbringing. So a little bit about your childhood or teenagers or what have you, just to try to give us an example of why you are the way you are today. If there's anything that happened during those years, it'd be fun to hear.
For sure. I mean, obviously there's a reason for the story you just shared, right? Obviously born and raised in Utah. Like, this is my beloved state and city. Like, very few people, if any, I think, bleed the beehive like I do. Like, I absolutely love this city.
I love it.
I love the people in it. I love who make it what it is, the sociology of each of our sidewalks. It's just such a beautiful intersection of just opportunity and food and movement, culture, fashion, sports. I mean, it's so hot now, but being a kid that was born in the 80s who grew up in the 90s to see where we are today, like the 90s were rich and awesome. And like, here we are in 2023 and Utah is just like unmatched in the city, in my opinion. I've lived in many other places across the Southwest, but Utah is most definitely home. I grew up in Sandy. Kind of an interesting dynamic. I didn't grow up in a family that had a lot of choices, but I never spent a single day unloved. I think that's like one big thing. If we just have one thing to give to our kids and to our family and really in our legacy, if it's just like one thing, just make sure that your family, your kids, and your legacy know that they are loved daily, because that's a big cheat code, right? I always say, like, my dad raised me, but like we were rich in love, but we were poor in money and choices. My pops did his best. Neither of my parents graduated high school. And so this was like you just go to work early. Like my dad, my mom and my dad had my sister at 15. And so that was a little shift, right? Yeah. Here they are, like in the 70s, my dad's in high school, my mom's in high school, and they're like dropping out, going to raise the family. And that was kind of their just priority towards life, was just like, well, I guess you just roll up your sleeves and go to work. And I think that work ethic is most definitely a great insight and reality. But I most definitely was one of those kids that like would show up to the gas station and see the other family. I'm like, I want that. Mm-hmm. Like, I want to be in that boat, in that camper, headed to Lake Powell, or I want to live in that neighborhood, or I believe that is like tangible, and there is a reality that you can earn that. I don't know how I started thinking that way, to be honest, but somewhere around like 15, I knew that there was a different path for me. And I most definitely am that one in my family that completely disrupted, the family tree. Especially in terms of just monetary experiences and business, as well as just opportunity. So that's a little kind of quick, tidbit of the background. I got into competitive bowling as a kid, and that's really what carried me forward into business. It was those mentors and coaches that I had in a competitive sport like that. At that level, I bowled more than 34,000 games.
Wow.
I haven't bowled for 20 years.
Really?
Well, not quite 20. I think like 2006, maybe 2008 was like the last time I ever did it like competitively. But from 11 years old till I was 22, there was like nothing else in my way. Like, that was the only thing. It was like, how can you be more goal-oriented than like knock down all 10 pins on the first try, right? It was like really simple for me. And having that association with those great mentors and coaches at that level, if bowling was in the Olympics in the late 90s, I would have represented the USA. Like that, I was bowling at that level. And it was awesome. Like, it was such a dream for me. I was shaped like a linebacker, dude. I'm going to high school in the 90s, dude, and I'm a sponsored bowler. Like, talk about a wild life. No peaking in high school in that environment, right? Which was super cool. And I got the amazing opportunity to go out and compete competitively. And there was a bit of a purse that was made during that time. And I came back, and approached the guys that own Fat Cats. If you may know that, like locally, there was one in Provo, and there's a handful now. But back then there was one on like 39th and 9th East, or 33rd and 9th East in Salt Lake City. And I approached the owners and I said, hey, I want to lease a spot for a bowling pro shop. And they're like, okay. And it took a little bit of negotiation. I'd never owned my own business before. Before that, it was like I bowled for money, or it was like grassroots entrepreneurship, right? Like I was mowing lawns or hustling different gigs or things like that as a kid, but had never owned like my actual, my own business. And so I approached, the owners, negotiated a deal. Next thing you know, I own McHenry Sports Shop, and I don't think I'm even 20 yet when this happened. And I had that sports shop going for about 6 months, and leading up to that, like the only thing I really knew was anything about bowling, from like instruction to bowling equipment, to like drilling bowling balls and sizing, to like repairs, as well as like sales and retail. So like bowling shoes, equipment, anything associated with the game, I felt like I was pretty much an expert in. And so I ran this pro shop for about 6 months successfully, and the owners came to me and said, hey, like, you're too talented for this. And I'm like, what do you mean I'm too talented for this? This is my dream. And in that moment, I'm like offended. Sure. And the reality is, about 2 hours later, I agreed to their opportunity, and they just approached me and said, hey, like, we think you have too much talent for this bowling pro shop, and we think you'd be great in our business, and we have this vision of a new restaurant, and we think you'd be a great first general manager. And so I said yes. And like fast forward to now, like I said yes to be the first general manager of what was then called Costa Azul, which is now Costa Vida. Oh, wow. And so I was there from like inception to many. Wow. And so think about that, like in your like fundamental years, here I'm in full concept creation, and I have no idea. Right. Like I'm in like full ops architecture. I have no idea. Like I didn't even know what a C-suite was back then, right? Like let alone, I didn't even know like any of the metrics around it. All I knew was that I loved people, and that I was like determined, like unwaveringly committed to the outcome, whatever that might be. Before that, it was bowling, right? Just knock all 10 pins down on the first try. The reality is beat whoever's next to you. Right. I stepped into the food business. It was the exact same thing. I'm going to be the absolute best. And so kind of take that. I spent 7 years there, and then it just quickly turned into an opportunity where it was like sweat equity, double down, sweat equity, double down, and did that through a variety of brands that were all Utah based. And I've never taken on or been a part of a restaurant that was already in market. So it was either like I was recruited by like a founding team or a fund in some way to either like take it off the ground or bring it back to market, if that makes sense. Sure. Like, oh, hey, we have a turnaround opportunity. We're going to rebrand, or hey, this is incubation. Let's like incubate, launch to market, prove viability, and ultimately go to scale. And so that's like a little, tidbit of where it came from. There's a lot of detail inside, but it really came from, I just wanted to go and create and build something for myself and my legacy and the things around me. And what's beautiful about the restaurant business, Chase, is that it doesn't care where you come from. It doesn't care like what walk of life, what neighborhood you're from, what school you went to. All it cares about is how you show up and what you're willing to learn and contribute. And you can be wildly rewarded for it. I mean, it truly is the industry of opportunity.
I love it, man. I love it. Well, first of all, I love the energy, and I can see the passion as you're speaking about this, because I can tell it means so much. It
changed my life.
And I love it. So, going back, just diving into the transition from Pro Bowler and McHenry Sports Shop to Costa Vida. I guess how old? You said you were around 20 years old, pro bowling. Yeah. Okay. Made that transition. So what was the leap there? I mean, why go from, hey, starting your own bowling shop to going kind of head first into this new restaurant concept? Dude,
it was kind of wild. The owner of Fat Cats at the time, his name is Sean Collins. Dude's a stud. Total stud. Like one of my greatest mentors of all time. And he's that guy, like classic, like Utah County entrepreneur, right? Just like probably got his original career started in like some MLM company, ultimately then got into this kind of retail and then got into experiential stuff, and really had just like self-made and had done really well. And I just quickly like gleaned, it was like that power of influence. I'm like, I want to be that guy. Like I want his energy, I want his opportunity, I want his life. And you see that like when you're sitting across the table, and although he's probably like 15 years older than me, maybe 20, somewhere in that range, but like there's a big difference when you're 20 and they're like 35 to 40 looking like they have it all together, which I think we all, seem like that from time to time, or at least most of us. Yeah. And just something told me like, this is the right choice. And what was wild is I had spent my entire life in the bowling business, especially like my adolescence to like early kind of mid youth to like stepping into, career. And it took one conversation between he and I was in. So really it was like his power of influence, and I went all in. And it was like, I turned the page. I like literally never bowled competitively again, and took all of that energy from that level of sport and put it right into our business. I was entering as an underdog, right? The only thing I knew was entering as an underdog is the outcome is like, you want the Darlene story to win.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah.
And so that was really it.
Yeah. It makes perfect sense.
Which is why I love people. It's like why I think a big part of your platform and your message here is like to find that like inner, opportunity and just commit to it and go build something. Right. And oftentimes I can be the very person sitting across the table from you that sees a potential in you. They want to champion it before you even see it in your own reflection. That was Sean with me. Like that guy saw something in me that I wasn't even aware of. And not only it changed my life, it changed thousands of lives around me, like directly and indirectly, just based off of our business. Right.
Yeah, love it.
Yeah.
What would you say? So you went in as, it sounds like almost like an internship apprentice type thing where you were going in without
damn near on scholarship, dude.
Yeah, right.
For sure.
Probably, very low paying. So what would you say? Because I've heard that pattern a lot as I talk with people is, when people are either coming out of school or thinking about their first job or whatever, it's like, how did you balance, I want to make money versus learning? Like, what was that?
Here's kind of an interesting, think about who you interview. Right. And think about how often you're hearing like, dude, I did that for a year. I did that for 2 years, or I took very little pay, but I went all in. There's like a common thread in some, right? You hear this a bit. And I do believe that's like one of the biggest differentiators in success and sustained success is what you did in those fundamental years. Like, how did you work and what was the off? Like, what was the counterbalance? Because you have to go ridiculously all in no matter what you choose in order to create that type of like big output. Right? I believe. And so there was no question that when I tell people this, I'm like, I'm not trying to sound like Gary Vee right now or somebody else. I'm telling you for 7 years, I didn't take a single day off. Not one.
Wow.
Like I missed most holiday vacations. I wasn't like home with the family over time. I spent Thanksgivings alone in airports and hotels. This is a true story. Like I went all in. Do I tell people they should go do that? No. But here's the reality. If you're going to build anything that is worth it, right? Anything that's worth it and that's sustainable, you're going to have like an outweighing or overweighing counterbalance towards that mission in order to build anything worth it, right? I put in the thousands and thousands of hours. So I tell people like in those early fundamental years for me in our business, I just didn't have the experience, but no one was going to outwork me. And my solve to every one of those problems back then, Chase, was just labor. Like I'll just work harder. I'll just work longer. There were times, dude, and I'll say it's probably one of the only times I've ever shared this publicly, but we used to have a fat cat or a Costa Vida at the entrance of BYU, right? It's actually still there, right? There's a Fat Cats next to it.
Right.
Dude, I used to literally sleep in the conference room and shower at the gym and open the restaurant. I would close, act like I locked everything up, right? And then I would sleep in the conference room of Fat Cats, and I would wake up and I'd go to Gold's Gym in Provo. And I'd work out, I would shower, I'd get ready, and I'd go back and I'd open the line. Because in my mind, I'm like, do I drive all the way back to Murray? Or do I just sleep here and get a 2-hour head start? And so it's like, that's how I thought. And I know that's why I'm sitting here.
Yeah,
I was willing to pay a price that most people weren't. And even in today's market, like I see people that are like successful. I see people that join different varieties of business. I see these young entrepreneurs, but there's most definitely like a commonality in the ones that like really make a big impact. And my mentor at the time, I remember asking him like years and years ago when I had first joined, like I really want to go to spring break with my friends. And he told me no. And I thought it was like the most ridiculous thing. And he was like, dude, spring break will always be there, but will this opportunity always be here for you? And he's like, and I'd prefer that you just like basically roll up your sleeves and go to work. And I'm like, done. And I think that kind of pressure, it sounds a little ridiculous to say out loud, but the reality is like I was all in on this guy and he knew. And before I even understood it, I just needed a little bit of a guide because I had all the horsepower, right? So I just needed someone to help me navigate. I needed someone to provide me with a map, but I just knew I could get there. And so, yeah, dude, I mean, I most definitely, and I still to this day, like I still work a lot, a little different because I mean, I prioritize some things. I'm sure we'll get a little deeper in it, but the reality is like, I love spending time with my girls. That's like my favorite hobby at this point. And so now I'm just much more efficient. Yeah. Samantha and others, those around my architecture, allow me to be like in my wheelhouse, so that way when I'm in my wheelhouse, I just execute. And it's basically like guide, resource and lead, which then allows me a lot of autonomy to go play with my family.
That's amazing.
Which I dig.
Yeah, and you said it. Those early years, I'm sure, were defining, and that's the reason why the McHenry Group exists. Why you're sitting here, and I wanted to learn from you and introduce you
Likewise.
to this platform. So I love it, man. Costa Vida, huge brand here in Utah. I mean, I couldn't tell you how many times I've been there. Even that Provo location when I was at BYU.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it sounds like 7 years you were there.
Long time. Yeah, the first.
A little bit of that story,
so,
like how they got off the ground and how you.
Dude, it's kind of wild. So they just had their 20th anniversary.
Okay.
Which is crazy, and their most relevant years yet. Like a big part of my best friends are still in that organization. Like my best friend Josh Brinkerhoff, I hired him when he was 16. He's the vice president now. So it's really cool to see those like homegrown Utah businesses. I don't quite know where their valuation is at this point, but I think it's like north of 200 million. I mean, It's most definitely like a darling, sweet pork and tomatillo ranch brand. And I tease people. I go like, I bought my first 2 houses with sweet pork and tomatillo ranch. Like, I'm not saying these homes were crazy, but like in the early 2000s, that was a big deal when you were a young kid, right? And that's really like, that's where I learned. That's not only did I get my degree, I got my master's degree in that business at a young age. Like I was a graduating MBA in my early 20s who had practical experience. Like that's an advantage.
Yeah.
Right. And so that brand, I bleed it. I still bleed it to this day. I don't have any like participation or ownership in it. I just have a lot of pride and love for it.
Sure.
Like that's just a reality. My friends are there. I'm vested in it. I push hard. By the way, Sean, if you're listening right now, I push hard to try to grab a market of those still. And like we get closer and closer from time to time. But I'm a big fan of that brand.
Are they franchising or how are they operating?
They did franchise, they corporate. Now they kind of have an operating partnership in their architecture now. So they kind of have a variety of ways that they're doing it. I'm just trying to get a territory.
Yeah.
Because like, listen, dude, I mean, when you're there from day one, it's in your blood. And again, I don't believe I would be sitting here if it wasn't for that opportunity.
That's
great. Most specifically with my mentor and boss at the time.
Yeah, love it.
Yeah.
So funny anecdote. So I was my first job was at a Bajío.
Oh, cool.
Actually, so we were in Lexington, Kentucky at that time. My dad was a news anchor, so we were out in Lexington. Bajío opened up a restaurant. They ended up closing, but I know that there's some overlap with Bajío and Costa Vida like bought out a bunch of those locations. But it's been fun to see their growth.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah, that was a cool acquisition towards the end. That was like right around the time that I had like left the company, was right around the time that they were going through that last acquisition. So super cool. Such a dope brand and a total darling. Like it's a Utah darling brand. And, unlike others that were birthed in Utah, Cafe Rios and others, Bajío and those that are around that brand, Costa Vida is having its most relevant years 20 years later, which goes to show the quality of that brand.
Yep.
And what they're shaking up. I mean, in rice and beans, and I know it's because in those early years, they went deep and wide. Right. And when you go deep and wide, it sounds like you had Andrew, on a few weeks ago. But when you go deep and wide in your architecture before you go radically vertical, you just have a lot more stability. Right. And you can just navigate the pressures of environment and elements because your foundation is so strong. They did that knowingly or not. They did it and they did a damn good job.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's great. Yeah. It's been fun to see him grow. So then I saw that you were part of Blue Lemon, even Stevens. I mean, similar structure where you were kind of
totally just
there,
like invited, right? Okay. So it was like Small Lake City, this, you've represented Family Office and others like, like the Costa Vida to Blue Lemon, that was very similar money and very similar personalities and realities. And so it's Small Lake City. You create, you're driving performance and results across an entire business or that architecture, the referral happens, right? And so those next couple of brands were just great stepping stones of not only opportunity and experience, but just ownership. And that really started my executive career, right? As it started to grow. And that really put me on the C-suite of emerging brands, which was great, right? Like, I don't think I wore a pair of jeans for like 5 or 6 years. It was like, I was very tailored. And that now I'm like cutoffs and cool shoes and just like leading experiences in the communities that I love. But that was very much my time to like strengthen my acumen, to strengthen my enterprise experiences, as well as just like leading from the C-suite of large brands. Whether that means that you're leading hundreds to maybe a couple thousand team members, or you're driving revenue in a sales org from $1 million to upwards of 100 million. That's a specific set of skills it takes to get to those levels. Those were those years for me.
Yeah.
And still from zero to many, right? It was all incubation.
Right.
So
I love it. I love it. Such valuable experience.
Thank
sounds
you.
like.
Yeah.
So shifting to now the McHenry Group.
Yeah.
So what was
The fun stuff, man.
Yeah. What was the deciding factor? So you've been working with other brands. You've been building this awesome resume. When did you feel like, okay, I'm ready now to do my own thing? Like, how did that come about?
It's interesting. I'll go a little deeper with you on this one, Chase, right? Because I think the listeners in here, I hope, are like aspiring entrepreneurs or those that really want to build something. You know, it's one thing to like tell yourself you're the guy, like you own it. You're taking ownership. There's a huge difference when you do, right? There's a big difference between signing the front of the check and the back. And I was very good, I believed, at like being the guy, like being someone else's guy, like being the hired hand, right? But I really wanted to be the guy. And it was almost like subconsciously, dude. Like subconsciously, I found myself at times like almost sabotaging my opportunity. Because like, to be honest, I wasn't a great employee. I just wasn't. I was great if you had autonomy. I've had a bunch of autonomy and a bunch of control. Like we went and created some dope results. But if I was like having to check a box for you, I was almost like self-sabotaging. And I found myself in a really difficult situation a few years ago in one of those brands. And it was the last one I was involved with before I launched the McHenry Group. And there was some tough stuff that happened around that. And what I realized is that there were decisions being made that I was ultimately responsible for, but I wasn't making the decision, right? And I had to sit back in that for a moment and go, wait a minute, like I'm at the mercy of other people's decisions. And I'm like, listen, I'm done. I want to be at the mercy of my own decisions. And if they're good, bad, or ugly, I own them, right? So that's on me. And that's really why I birthed the McHenry Group. I was like, you know what, dude, I'm not here for anyone else in that way. I'm here for me, and whatever decisions I make, good, bad, or ugly, they're on me, and I'm going to take it to the market. And so launching the McHenry Group, man, it was like, I'd left a $30 million company, many locations, and acquired a 67-seat pizza restaurant in Mormon suburbia in Draper. You want to talk about like a shock to your system. Like I went from like enterprise executive for the prior 8 years to like walk in and all of a sudden I'm like managing 67 seats and I'm greeting every guest that walks through the front door. And some days I'm doing a pizza roll and other days I'm rolling silverware and some days I'm the maintenance man and some days, you know, and my wife said it really well. She was like, one day I'm like, I think I was like sanding the patio, like railings. And she was like, hey, this is the job of an owner, not of a president. And that was like a big shift for me. But I knew, Chase, I knew my reward center was like creating opportunity. I knew inside of my skill set and kind of, I think my gifts was the ability to look around corners a bit and like anticipate what the market needs. And the McHenry Group is like dead on my reward center, right? Like I'm not in the business because I'm a culinarian, right? Or that I love cheese or wine or a certain, you know, protein, or like I'm over the top about like the forage of something.
Yeah.
I'm over the top about you. And it just so happens that the greatest vehicle for that, connecting you, is this.
Yep.
It just so happens that like, yes, this Oakwood Fire Kitchen and Draper serve Utah's and Salt Lake City's like best Neapolitan style pizza, hands down, no lie. I'm looking at the camera like 100%. But I don't do it for that. I do it because that pizza connects you and I, and it connects our community. And we just win at it, right? Because I believe that food connects everyone. And what a beautiful conduit, like to connect my obsession with people. And so that's what happened at the McHenry Group. I'm, damn, I got to create these cool environments and great menus and an opportunity for people to be seen, right? And walk into. And it just so happens that I can monetize that. And that's where it's just been lights out. And once we got close on that, I'm like, we had done some really cool stuff before and created some great performances and employed a lot of people. Like I think I've generated over like 3,000 jobs, somewhere in that range. In Utah, that's a lot, right? Yeah. There's only 3 million people.
No kidding, yeah.
And doing that now within the McHenry Group, it's just like every day I wake up, I'm like, damn, whose life are we going to change?
Love it.
Because I stand there like this morning, dude, I'm walking around, I'm like watering my flowers in my neighborhood or in my house. And I'm looking around, I'm like, holy shit. These are like neighborhoods I used to drive through as a kid and go like, I wonder what he did. You know, I don't know if you ever did that as a kid, where you're like, hey, the guy that owns that house, he does this.
I still do it.
And in my mind, I'm like, I'm looking around, I'm like, geez, I know my neighbors.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you know what? I earned it. Like I stand here, my feet are in the grass. I'm more grounded and more self-aware than I've ever been in my life. And a lot of shit's happened to me and for me, like no doubt. We can go as deep as you want on that. But I'm standing here this morning and there's something very therapeutic about taking care of my flowers. I've always been that way. And my feet are like, my toes are in the grass this morning. I'm like, damn. Like, hope I'm making people proud because I'm happy, you know?
Yeah.
It was cool. It was a really cool moment. Yeah.
I'm sure you are. And
yeah,
I resonate a lot with that because even from, you mentioned when you were 15, 16, looking at the campers, the boats, the lake pal trip, like, dude, you know, I want to do that. And then driving by people's houses, I still do it because I'm still on the up and up, right?
Totally.
And it's like, what is that guy
when
doing?
aren't we?
He's got the 10,000 square foot house and, you know, by the Draper Temple.
Then he's only there part of the time, you know, like,
what's
100%.
So I love it, man. That's so great and inspiring. Diving in a little bit more. So it sounds like Oakwood Fire was the first acquisition.
I mean, that's like, that literally got the McHenry Group started.
So what was it about, I guess, that concept? And then also, how did you, fund it, put it together? Do you have partners? I kind of like to go in the details there just to kind of get people educated.
I mean, listen, dude, it gave us a home, right? Like that wasn't our brand that we had incubated that we were going to create and take it to the moon. In fact, it doesn't really fit our model. The only reason it fits our model is because it's our home office. Mm-hmm. And it just happens to print cash. And so it's a neighborhood staple and people love it. And my operating partner, Chef Ian Jensen, is a freaking rock star. And our GM, Courtney Bramlett, she's just dope. Like these two just run such a great business. It's 67 seats. It does over 2 million in revenue.
Wow.
The spot's practically free. I can't even build a kitchen now for what I paid for it. And so I did it, I think like any other young, scrappy entrepreneur does. Like I had some of my own money and I went to friends and family. And I raised about $100K for it. And within 2 years, I'd paid them all back. And we started making money and I went to them. We'd had an opportunity and I just said, hey, are you guys willing to take some even cash on this deal? And they said yes. And it was kind of cool. And when I say friends and family, these actually weren't blood relatives. These are family that became family. I went to my executive coach at the time and a couple others that were close to us, design build firm that we'd been working with, and who had seen what I had created in the enterprise level, had been clients and customers for us at that time. And we went into it and that was like the first real deal. I've done it many other ways and many other times, but never for me.
That's awesome. Yeah. I love it. And just being scrappy, raising some money and making it happen. I love it.
Yeah.
Take us from there. Would love to hear like, okay, Oakwood Fire, sounds like things were going pretty well. What was the next?
Yeah. I think then we quickly brought Ginger Street, which was our Southeast Asian hawker style street food restaurant, to the heart of downtown. We opened it 6 months before the pandemic. We were building some momentum. Pandemic hit, we stayed open. It was very unique. I was one of the only restaurant groups in the country who never closed. That changed everything. I had a sense of calmness and responsibility. Something that's really cool about restaurants and bars, and you'll remember like the old show Cheers and others, but think about this for you and your own family. Like you go to restaurants for like celebration as well as mourning, right? Like, geez, like, hey, there's a funeral, there was a passing, or there was a form of crisis or gathering, right? You lean on your neighborhood restaurant and bar during times of crisis, like good, bad, and ugly, right? And for a place of normalcy. Right. It's like we get to be a bit of a beacon and oftentimes a lighthouse in community. And during the pandemic, I was like, man, it was just, I don't know why, Chase, I really don't, because it was very real in many ways, known and unknown. But the whole time I was like, we're going to be fine. I feel good. I'm not scared. I'm not concerned about catching COVID. I'm not like, my biggest concern was I had 140 plus team members at the time. And I had to protect their livelihoods and keep food on their own tables, not just my own. And yes, there's no question that I was vested and everything that I had was into the businesses. But when you build something from nothing, you can build something from nothing again. Like I'm not afraid of losing that, right? But it was really about the people. I had a stewardship to keep people engaged. And so we kept that open. And then we kept all of our businesses open. So we had Ginger Street in the heart of downtown. And that was a tough, competitive market. Like not even competitive, just tough conditions. I still think that downtown Salt Lake City, you might know this metric better than I do, but I still think it's only like 60% maybe, or 70% of its day part of like pre-COVID conditions. I think even to this point, because business has changed. Like people aren't in these high rises working anymore. Right. They're home. They're in their cars. They're at parks. They're in studios. Like, who knows? So Ginger Street was the next one. It was wild. We actually just closed it to pivot it into a drive-through and fast casual experience, which is really cool. Then we incubated Dirty Bird Hot Chicken.
Yep.
And Dirty Bird was one of the richest acquisitions per square foot in Utah's restaurant history. We opened that literally 6 weeks before the pandemic, but because it was counter service, because it was hot chicken, because the IP rocked. I mean, Dirty Bird, hello, it sounds cool as shit. It looks cool.
Yep.
And tasted awesome. Like it was there. It was a competitive sandwich, not the world's best, but most definitely not on the bottom, but contended in the top or third, right? And I've always said, like, if you have a product that contends and a brand that is wildly resonating within your market, within your target audience, you're going to win so long as you have the architecture to manage it and protect its quality, right? And it worked. And Wax Capital acquired it and they're taking it to the moon and we're stoked about it. So that was amazing. That built a big win for us early, right? That was like within 3 years, 2.5 years of the McHenry Group. So it was like successful business, created an opportunity, had to make a pivot, introduce a new brand, experience an exit, right on the heels of bringing Sunday's Best to the market, which is like the city's hottest brunch spot and soon to be the country's. Like what it's doing per square foot and the experiences and the moments that it's creating for its guests and the team in this market has just never been done before. And so you stack that win on top, right? And here we are. Now we're knocking on the door like year 3, almost year 4. And then here we are with Pica Rica, who's like, it's nuts. There's literally 30 people, 40 people outside every day before the door unlocks. And we've never made it to our closing time. Jeez. We sell out every day. And it's not like one of these, we're going to sell out because we didn't prepare. Just we are optimistic and motivated and highly motivated to crush it. So we build our pro forma and our day based off of the amount of protein we have for the day. So if we build it to get us to 7 p.m., but we sell out at 3, we're winning.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's a bit of what we're experiencing with Pica Rica on the Americana barbecue side. And so Sunday's Best is going to scale. We've got 2 locations under construction right now. And our newest add to that brand, which is 21 and older, which is called Sunday School, which is our happy hour lounge and day club, 21 and older, that sits above the restaurant now. Super cool. Kind of ties into that. I don't want to say speakeasy is the right word, but it just taps into that, like what you're seeing across the market. Like the hottest clubs and entertainment venues are restaurants that are turning into those, right? At a certain hour or after hour, because there's a hospitality associated with restaurants that people want in the entertainment industry. Like clubs just aren't the same anymore, right? Concerts just aren't the same anymore. And so the reality is that there's a finer element to the hospitality with those. And so we're doing that with Sunday's Best. We've got St. George on the Boulevard under construction, downtown Salt Lake City under construction, soon to start construction in Boise. And then you'll most definitely catch us in the airport as well, which is super dope.
Yeah.
We can't wait for that. And then, as I mentioned before with Pica Rica, that dog hunts. We're excited for that.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah.
That's amazing. So the idea with, you mentioned Dirty Bird, which by the way, it is an amazing concept.
Thank you.
We're partnering with Aaron and his team on a real estate deal.
Oh, dope.
With the Axia Group.
Yeah.
So
Dave and Aaron are both like those dudes, brass balls, and those guys are just cool.
Yeah,
like, they're just
exactly.
cool. Yeah,
exactly. But I've eaten there many times. That's awesome. So is the idea with McHenry Group, we kind of talked about before we started recording, but incubate, concept, get a handful of locations, or
totally.
What's the target?
Yeah, like it's real simple, right? Like we incubate, prove viability, early scale, right? So like call it 1 to 5 locations. And typically what we believe is by location 2, people are paying attention, right? We're hopefully gaining the attention of a Savory or a Wags or the many others in the country that are seeing that going, wait a minute, like we see this. There may be a gap in their portfolio, or they want to improve their portfolio and they see it. It's built on the metrics that make sense to them. And they're like, damn, we're going to take that and run it. And so we're full incubation. Like what do we believe is missing in the market, or what gaps are in the market? Let's close it with a brand that we truly believe in. And let's build out an architecture that can truly maintain and sustain its success viably through multiple locations. So we'll build that architecture so that way ultimately they can look at the brand and go, damn, we love it. The IP's in check. The brand itself is in check. Its position in the market's there. Its financials are in check. Bam, go.
Love it. Yeah.
And so that's really like incubate, proof viability, 1 to 5 locations, exit, because there's a lot of people. There's a big space between 5 and many, right? Between 5 and many. There's far less from 0 to 5.
Sure.
And there's even more that are like 50 to 500.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
And so we know we have the stomach lining, right? Remember, kid that didn't have anything, dude's not afraid of having nothing, right? Like I'm not even supposed to be here. It's exactly why I am. Right? If it was up to society, like society would have deemed me, like I'd be fighting that challenge of recidivism within our communities instead of like truly driving sustained impact and workforce and job force creation. Right? And so I'm like, geez, I have a responsibility in here. I'm going to do it and do it well. And so, man, very few people I think can incubate and really go through the levels of just true startup. And man, I don't call it callous. I don't know if the stomach lining is just there, iron stomach or not, but man, I love it. I love thriving in the trenches of opportunity.
Yeah, dude, it does take some serious stomach lining because, yeah, like you said, most people when they're like restaurants, oh, I want to franchise or I want to have the model already in place and be able to scale that. But you guys are like, from scratch, from zero, creating concepts. And all of them, like, obviously been to a few of them, your website. I mean, the brands are just clean.
Thank you.
They're just nice, man.
My team, they are, I always say like, they're like my visual storytellers, right? Like, I believe I've created this opportunity or this skill set that like make the North Star really bright. And I figured out this way to like articulate the vision, but my team really, they're the ones that just glowingly like build these. I just have the vision and the stomach lining. Keep using that one, but I just have the tenacity and the resources and ability to gather, but creating that alignment towards our North Star and then just empowering this like super smart team of mine to just go be ridiculously talented and get the hell out of their way.
Yeah, I love it. So you mentioned you raised $100,000 for the Oakwood.
Yeah.
Right now, when you open up a Pica Rica or a Sunday's Best, how are you financing that? How are you getting off the ground as investors? Are you using debt? Just be curious.
Cool. Yeah, I think there's always like a recipe, right? And we most definitely do a little recipe of both, right? We're pretty low on debt, but there also is like a debt that makes sense to your overall cap structure. And we are the majority of our own treasury. Right. So we typically maintain anywhere between like 70 to 90% of any one project. We never give up more than 25%. Right. So the reality is we typically move in kind of a more sophisticated angel environment, and we primarily raise all of our capital through like the same three parties. Right. Because we just continue to win. When people win with you, they just want to stay with you. Right. And the individuals that invest with us now, like they want as much as they can get. Right. I mean, our fold last year performed really well. And so when you look at that variety, so we'll open up anywhere between like I said, 10 to 25% of any one project. And we'll have, an overall like cap recipe, a little mix of debt from time to time, mostly all private equity, at least from the angel side, and then my own. Yeah. Which there's something to be said about just, continuing to win on your own money.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's great. How long does it take? So Pica Rica, for example, when you guys initially thought of the concept through design, development, recipes, all of that, what is that process?
So I'm kind of unique. They always say like the most successful people are the ones that like act swiftly. I think I act swiftly in terms of like when I have a brand and I feel good about it, I enter market, I work on my IP and I'm really quiet about it. But I process it a lot. And I oftentimes I tell people like it takes me longer to get to the point of like committed, but once I'm committed, we get to the outcome far faster than anybody else. So I think we skip the amount of time, right? That like most people might enter the market quicker, but it takes them a lot longer, right? To get to that place of viability. We like, might take me a lot longer to like, or much longer to actually commit to it. But when we enter the market, we're trailblazing. Like we are full gas, like no brake the whole time. And the only thing on our vehicle, dude, either makes us go faster or stop faster. There's no other baggage on it. Like that's it. Like we just remove all unnecessary weight and move. But typically for us, it's like, it takes us somewhere in the range from like incubation of idea to market about 2 years. Like, and I typically have the IP in market about 6 months before anybody's ever heard about it. Cause I just know, like I know now that our stuff rocks and people are paying attention to it. Right. And so like Sunday's Best was in market damn near for a year before anybody knew about it. But I knew the IP was super strong. Like Brunch Me Hard. Are you kidding me? Sunday's Best for brunch. It's like, it's killer. And so, yeah, that's typically it. And then when we launch the market, somewhere of like from like the time we sign a lease or go vertical, we're somewhere in like the 20 to 30 week range.
Got it.
Is what it takes us to go vertical to market.
Yeah. Makes sense. Yeah. How are you thinking about competition? So you mentioned like, some of these other groups.
Yeah.
Is it all like
I love
friendly?
them. I love them.
Yeah.
I love them, dude. Like I want to hold hands with them.
Yeah.
I dig them. Here's why. We all need a tiny bit of the available market share to be wildly successful. Bro, I can run a $6 million business with 700 people a day. When I run a $6 million business, my free cash is $1 million. I need 700 people a day, dude. I don't need 3 million.
Yeah.
I just need 700.
Right. And there's a lot of
right.
people.
And it's unique for me because I sell entrances and exits, and Utah's small, right? And so, yeah, I was like, there's there a time like Aaron and I do, we rough each other all the time. Like sometimes we message each other just to talk shit a little bit. And the good news is he can take it and I can take it. And it's fun to rub shoulders with guys like that are like full horsepower all the time, right? That dudes are smart and they're resourceful. Like someone like an Aaron or like a, you know, that you had on, like an Andrew, like that dude's a mentor of mine and doesn't even always know it. Like I pay attention to him. And the dude just got a sophistication about him. There's like an elegance to him. It's kind of odd. He's like a Lamborghini. He's like loud and obnoxious, but doesn't have to be. He's like sophisticated and smart, and it's cool, right? And so I appreciate that. So I don't really look at the competition in that way. I look at it as like we can all just be synergistic, right? And you can only eat at so many places,
right,
you know, over time. And by the way, like I hope that all of our dining rooms are just full every single day because there's still more business to go around. Like, I don't think it's like oversaturated, or I think there's some concepts that don't work, right? And I think there's poor timing on things or poor choices in real estate or geography or things like that. But to be honest, dude, we're at competitions with ourselves because when we run our plan, dude, we are so damn good. Like when we do us, we're hard to beat. Like when we are on our game, we are hard to beat. Because we're so wildly obsessed with the guest, and so many other business owners are so wildly obsessed with their business, and we're just not. We're obsessed with you, and the byproduct is this fruitful and ever-sustaining business that follows taking care of you. And when we're on that, dude, no one can keep up.
Yeah. Oh,
yeah,
man.
no one can keep up.
I love it, dude. And that's the right way to think about it. I think there's enough to go around when you start trying to,
bro, it's tiny.
Like
we just like, we all need this much of it.
Yeah.
We're not going like, dude, we're not trying to be Nike. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like we're not trying to like have a stronghold on like the marketplace. Like, do I believe that we're building really cool shit? Yes. And do I believe that other people are? Yes. Dude, Wag just brought like one of the coolest restaurants I've ever seen to Utah. Yep. He has to make it work.
Yep.
But I've saw him like that's a tier 1 market concept in a tier 4 or 5 market. Right? Like he's pushing the boundaries. Yep. And I think everyone that's smart in the industry on the outside is like, damn, bro, I hope this works. Because if it does, it's going to change the market.
Yeah.
Right? Like you got to prove that you can do 3,000 a square foot to make something like that justify and grow sales. You know, those kind of comps don't exist in Utah. When they do, it'll change everything.
Yeah.
You know, and so, you know, more power to them. And by the way, dude, you got to like, you don't talk about stomach lining. It's a lot of money. And so, yeah, dude, I dig it. And it's encouraging when other people are like, I don't look at it and go, man, that's so damn cool. I'm jealous. Or I don't look back at this and go like, dude, I wish I would have thought of that. I'm like, damn, good for you. And I'm going to be your fan. Like that's one thing that I think I have a reputation for. Chase is I sit in other people's dining rooms and I support them, right? Christy and I, we were at a restaurant this past week on 9th and 9th. It was really cool. We're just having pizza. We cruise in, it's like we're walking downtown or on 9th and 9th. We sit down, we have some pizza, it's cool. I take this picture of Chrissy. It was just a cool moment, right? Everything was looking good. And I had like posted it, I tagged them, and I get this note back. Whoever's managing their social, I don't know if it's the owner or not, but it's like, hey man, the legend himself is like in our dining room. And I like stood back for a moment. And I was like, damn, that like means something, right? Not that I want to be said that told I'm a legend, because I don't really think that. But I think it says something when you sit in someone else's dining room and they're honored that you're there and you're in their very business. That's a big deal, right? So to me, I'm like, I got to protect that energy. I have a responsibility in that to like champion others. And so I think a big part of the success in my career, as well as just in the industry and how we've contributed, is because I just pay attention to people.
Yeah.
And I champion people, and I know how hard it is, right? Like I know how hard it is to succeed, especially in our business, right? I think anything with a low barrier of entry, Chase, as you may know, has a extremely high failure rate, right? And you know, you're like, hey, I have the world's best salad. I'm gonna have the world's best business. Like, no, you're not. You have the world's best salad, but you don't have acumen, you'll have nothing.
Yeah.
You need to know how to run a business, or you need to know people.
I love it, man. You've said that over, you know, people are the primary focus.
That's the gas.
And that's just, it's so good. And like in our industry too, it's like, hey, we're going out to raise capital, and you've done it too. You're raising money for your concepts or for real estate or what have you. And it's like, people aren't so much concerned about the returns they're going to get. It's more of like, how are you treating them? How is that relationship?
I think it's both, right?
It's both.
I think you have to have meaningful returns. But I'll tell you this, like my first venture that I raised money for, right? I raised about $500,000, maybe a little bit more. And it took me like 6 to 8 months. And I'm cooking for people. My chef's cooking for people. We're hosting events. We're doing pitch decks. Like it's dinners every week. By the way, can be exhausting. And anyone who's an entrepreneur like needs to understand that process. And now like you've given people a reason to invest. You create that opportunity energy and you create a reward on that investment. Now I can raise that amount of capital in a group text.
Yeah.
In a couple days or maybe just one.
Yeah.
Cause you just like, once you stack results and you start to push for it. And so, yeah, there is an interesting dynamic, but I let people know like, no one's here on scholarship. Like we're in the business to make money. And yeah, you can be likable and you can have great energy and you can have high horsepower and you can have a resume, but what actually matters is today.
Right.
And what actually matters is like the steward that you are of that investment.
Absolutely.
Right. That's what matters.
Yeah.
Right. And I've had great brands before under different leadership or reality, my association, Young in Business, that were like awesome and made no money. And at some point there's just like, it's insolvent. Like at some point it's just like, if it never makes money, it's going to die.
Yep.
Right. No matter how much you love it, no matter how much you give it, at some point it's just going to be off. Right. And that was a hard lesson for me. Like as a young, manager, leader, executive, like everything felt right, but it didn't produce any results. Mm-hmm. Like you need both.
Yeah.
It needs to kick ass and take names and make money.
Yeah.
I always go like when I was doing with the Pica Rica team this week, I'm being very like transparent, but like this was yesterday, like we're talking, or what's today? Yeah, I think it was yesterday, but we're talking through this group channel thread that we had. And I'm like, dude, relevance and profitable, like profitable and relevant win, like total win. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Anything else doesn't matter. It's not our plan. Like profitable and relevant and profitable. That's it. Like you can't have one without the other. Yeah. Not in our business.
Amen. Well, that's great. Well, what's next for you guys at the McHenry Group? You've got a few great concepts. Sounds like, a couple second, third locations for a few of them, but
listen, this is the hot spot for us right now. We got into entertainment on accident. And when I say we got into entertainment on accident, if you've been watching closely or like paid attention to what we were doing, like we got into this sports and fashion, like high fashion and sports kind of on accident about 1.5 years ago, 2 years ago, because a big part of our clientele were like designers and actors and athletes. And we started creating value. Next thing you know, they're like, hey, we need special events. We need parties. We want clubs. We want insulated clubs. We want all the club fill without, a public list. Right? Or we want these curated moments without like the rest of the public. And we started executing on that. And then all of a sudden, like we'd built up this momentum and then All-Star hit. And then All-Star, like we went hard and we did something that the city had never shown up in any way. Like Utah put themselves on the map in an entirely new stigma, in an entirely new way, regardless of what Charles Barkley and Shaq had to say. Cause I know those guys were just popping off because we took care of them all week and they had a great time. Yeah. But I was seeing what we were able to pull off, right? And I mean, we had Travis Scott back-to-back 2 nights in a row. We didn't pay him $1, right? Like literally we were monetizing on his camp. And all of a sudden we were having these moments where like the biggest athletes and the biggest entertainers and rappers in the country are at our venues. And we were like, whoa. And then all of a sudden it was like, now we know managers and agents and realities. And so we started a company called Thunder and Lightning Entertainment. My partner in that, and most specifically, is Xavier Jackson, who knows that professional sports arena really well and knows the entertainment management and agent arena really well. So we brought our assets and energy, our black book and relationships, I think our relevance, as well as just like his ability to connect and establish, I think, trust and conduit within these various channels. And so that's a big part of our future. Like that's why you hear us talking about 21 and older venues. We have a boutique hotel, experiential pool, music venue, multiple bar environment. Like we got all kinds of cool stuff happening. And we really see this like really cool, healthy, and experiential entertainment company, really growing throughout Utah, but really getting a stronghold on the Southwest. It's going to birth right here in Salt Lake City. And to see that happening, like that's going to be a disruptor that's going to be talked about, I think, coast to coast. Cause they're like, wait a minute, like who are these who are these guys from Utah that are doing this? Right. And, All-Star leading up to and even after has shown us like, we got something. Like we got something in that. So this entertainment side is like a big birth in addition to our great brands going to market. And we have 2 new brands coming as well. Timing wise, I'm not romantic about building like just a new brand. Like I'm romantic about closing the gap on what I believe is missing. And I think 2 of our next 2 brands, in addition to what we're doing in the entertainment sector, are the hottest things we've done yet.
Really?
And I feel like what we just talked about is pretty damn cool.
Yeah.
But the hottest things yet are yet to come. And so my big focus right now is just to stay super healthy, man. I've dropped 40 pounds in the past since November, almost 50 pounds. Like I really just, I want to stay young and mobile and just fresh so that I can execute on these visions and put a lot of people to work and change a bunch of lives and just inspire my community to be its absolute best and hopefully just leave it, far better than I ever found it.
I love it. That's so good. That's so good, Michael. And I did see on your social a lot of the events you did during the All-Star weekend. Yeah. Looked awesome.
You just had to roll with it. Like you're like, you're not really stargaze. You had to roll with it. You're like, so you have Kanye and Rick Ross and Travis Scott and Jay, like you got everybody who's relevant in these verticals. And you're just like, acting like you're supposed to be here, man. You just got to roll with it. Yeah. The good news for me is like, man, I had no idea oftentimes who a lot of these, athletes and artists were. I mean, I know the big names. But I was like, man, I was in Vegas a few weeks ago and I got tackled backstage at Dre's. Not tackled, but I got like hugged. And it was like this really cool engagement. And I get done and I like look at my guy and I'm like, dude, who was that? He's like, dude, it was Tyga. And I was like, what? And he's like, yeah, man. He was like telling me that he can't wait to like blow up on our platform and like come out to Utah and hook up with Austin. And if he's not on tour, they'll come to the new restaurant. And all of that came from like the experience that we had created, during All-Star. And I was just like, I didn't even know how to roll with it. So I just was like, when you create value, people just show up, right? Because imagine trying to court these individuals from time, right? Like think about courting people for your platform. Like how many DMs do you have to send? How many things you have to come through? Yeah. Then there's this whole other layer of just insulation and gatekeeper when you're a relevant star. Right? When you're a relevant entertainer, actor, whatever it might be, athlete, there's layers of gatekeepers. And when they're walking up to you and singling you out, you're like, got it. So I just stay authentic to who we are to create as many experiences as we possibly can. And man, just listen, if you're just putting the shovel in the dirt every day just to maximize value, the right people show up if your mission's clear.
It's amazing.
Yeah, the right people show up to it.
Love it, Michael. Last couple of questions.
Yeah,
we'll
bro,
wrap
please.
this up, man.
Yeah.
You've mentioned a couple of mentors that you've had throughout your life. And I think you're part of Jimmy's program.
Damn right.
But would love to hear, just throughout your life, what role have mentors played in your life and what advice would you give to someone looking to kind of find some mentorship?
The greatest role that anyone has ever played in my life is mentor. Like I wouldn't be here. Right? Like people seeking out my potential before I ever knew I had it. And once I started to recognize it, I got smart about who I actually leaned into to help me unpack it. Right? And I'm a big believer in the right coaches, like a huge believer in accountability, partnership, and deliberate discomfort, right? And growth. Like I'm a big believer of it. I have 2 coaches right now, both of which are incredible. Like one working from the inside out and the other one working from the outside in, right? And I was so focused from an executive coach standpoint for so long that I kept evolving the side of my professional career. But like my life was like, my personal life was like in shambles, right? Like old friend and mentor used to tell me like, dude, get your damn house in order. I'm like, dude, my house will get in order as soon as I stack a few more, my portfolio is just not quite there, but I'll operate this way. And the reality is like, it took a great coach and tribe of mine and Jimmy Rex and We Are the They. That really got my house in order. Not them specifically, but the curriculum, right? Like the environment and opportunity that Jimmy Rex has so artfully curated for men to go to work on them. Right? To like create an environment where you can be vulnerable enough, Chase, to go work on it. And the cheat code for guys like you at 30 or the guys at 25 that don't have to like rebuild it for someone like me at like 38, right? When all of a sudden, like, you've worked your whole life to build this big, what you believe is this really meaningful portfolio, and you're standing in this space and you have no meaningful relationship around you because you built this wake known and unknown because all you care about is success. And then all of a sudden you stand there and you're not healthy and you have no one else to share it with. What's the point, dude? Right? That's where I'm like, now, dude, it's like, dude, I spend every free moment I have with my daughters and my family, the people that I love, like straight up. If I'm not in my dining room, dude, or in my office, if I'm with you, I love you. Straight up. There's no in between. I only spend time with people that I truly love, that inspire me to be great, and that I have a responsibility to help guide, right? And so I have to give like a huge part of that to Jimmy. Like, he has done an amazing job. My tribe and my friends, those true accountability partners that have come there. I'm in the leadership group. There's 50 of us, and those dudes are hitters. You know, some of those cats are flying in on their own jets, you know, these guys, but these are also dudes that ball in their Ferraris. Right? Like, or, you know, there's a couple guys in there. It's like, dude, they're the happiest guys ever driving around their Honda Civic, bro. And they love it. And I love it for them, right? They're just like, they're as happy and as content as can be. And they are good men. And so that's awesome. Like, that's dope. That like inside out work is so important. And my executive business coach, Dan Scholl, is a rock star. Like, the dude was like CIO at Nike, one of the top in line at Nike. He's the CIO, or like one of the top in line at REI now. I work with him every single week. And he's like that guy, dude, like Michigan, MIT, like the dude he's a brain, not entrepreneurial, very analytical, very process driven, picks me apart in the most beautiful ways, like helps me, you know, just stay structured, I think fundamental in principle as an entrepreneur. And so I work glowingly with those coaches, and mentors are the difference maker, dude. The right coaches are the difference maker. Like, put yourself in rooms, dude, where you really are the smallest guy. I got a big personality. I believe I've created some cool stuff. I roll in groups right now, dude, where like I'm the smallest being in there. And I just love it too, dude, because my room just keeps getting bigger and bigger, right? It's like I can't tell you how many rooms I've outgrown, and how many of those rooms I've entered as the smallest guy. And I've outgrown those rooms because of my association, because my commitment to those outcomes, and the people that are around me that see it and hear it and feel my potential and are vested in it because we're good to each other. Dude, it makes a damn difference.
Dang, yeah, man. That's good. That's great. I mean, that's so good, Michael, and that resonates with me, dude. Because I, like you said, I think the last year has been pretty transformational for me. Doing this podcast has been a big part of it, because for me to be able to sit down for an hour every week with someone like Michael McHenry or Jimmy Rex, or, you know what I mean? You start to absorb.
Totally. I mean, listen, dude, as a guide, as a facilitator, it's I always tell people too, as a mentor, right? Like, you become. Like, I always said, like, dude, it's tattooed on me, the teach, coach, lead philosophy that I believe in, like the teaching and coaching and truly leading people. Like, I am the one that learns the most when I'm teaching and coaching and leading others, right? I sit in these, and what I glean from these are the opportunities that show up, or who follows us on these platforms afterwards. And I hear their stories, and next thing you know, I'm vested in their success because I believe in them, right? They believed in a message that they heard. It's crazy to me what can happen when you create that type of universal, you know, that alignment in your own universe, because I think we duplicate in our likeness, good, bad, and ugly.
Yeah. Oh, man. So good. Well, last question, and we've kind of touched on some of these concepts a little bit, but you talked about success. You know, how does Michael McHenry kind of define success, or a life well lived? Yeah.
Dude, I'll tell you right now, man, every single day is such a gift. Every freaking day is a gift. And the moment that I stopped taking that for granted was the moment my entire life changed. Dude, literally every single day I take advantage of it, dude. I work as hard as I can, and I love as hard as I can every damn day. It's just true, bro. That's just how I live. And success to me throughout the years always meant something different, right? And I think that just continues to evolve. But dude, my health is my number one, dude. My relationship with me is my number one. Like, my truest success is this beautiful narrative that we have all day long inside of ourselves, in our heads and our hearts and our minds. And I have to work on that narrative because it's very self-convincing. And having success in my relationships has really been what I think is most valuable to me. I would trade anything and everything, dude. I live in a great neighborhood, dude. I got great friends. I got a lot of choices. Bro, every one of my vehicles is super fast. Like, I'm blessed. I really am. I've worked my ass off for it. I got a lot of great friends, dude. I got great family. My daughters, dude, my twins, my 12-year-old, like my baby mamas. Like, it's beautiful, bro. My life is beautiful. I would give up any monetary reality for the richness of my relationships and the richness of my health. Like, those two things are most important. Everything else is just a byproduct, you know, and the choices you earn monetarily just help that stuff. You get more coaches, you get more help in your health. Like, you know, someone like a Dave Allred, I'm sure you guys talked about it. Like, get yourself some youthful immunity, right? Like, yeah, that stuff gives you choices, but man, like, give me my personal health, right? Like, first, give me my breath, give me my health, and give me the people that I love, dude. Everything else is just a mystery I'll work out.
Oh, amazing. No better way to end, Michael. Thank you again for being here, man.
Yeah, man. Likewise. I appreciate you sharing the space, dude. Thank you for courting me on social, man. Like, I'm here to support you in any way that I can. And those that are on your platform, just follow me, dude. Michael McHenry on Instagram. That's the only social platform of mine that I actually run on my own. So if you DM me, that's me talking to you. If I comment back to you in a comment or message in a thread, that's me. But I'm here for it, man. I love my neighborhood.
Love it. Yeah, go check Michael out. Go to his restaurants, support his group, follow him on social media. And again, thanks for